The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Emily Douglas, the online editor of Business Grapevine, and today I'm with Drew Speller, commercial head at Ambit Technologies, who will be discussing the simple steps you can take to safeguard your business and your workers from risky driving. Throughout the webinar, there will be poll questions. Feel free to answer them, and the results will be posted when the majority has done so. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them at any point. I'll be monitoring them and putting them to Drew at the end. Okay, over to you, Drew.
That's great, thank you very much. Good afternoon. As was mentioned, I head up Ambit. We are creating a community of those who drive for work and those who look after workplace vehicles and employees who drive. Our new Ambit app, part of the Ambit community, is a free platform launching soon, which will allow you to manage workplace driving and to promote road safety. It will also help you with some of the topics that we're covering here today. So I'm here today to talk about why risky driving, and by that I mean behaviour from your employees, the vehicles that they drive and your own organisation could be putting your organisation at risk, as well as how some of those risks can be mitigated and measures can be implemented to reduce that risk. In the last 3 years, there have been over 15,000 crashes on UK roads. A quarter of those involve a business driver. On the screen, you'll see some statistics which demonstrate the risks that our employees and businesses can face. I'd like to pick out one specific line from those statistics rather than read through them all, which is around uninsured or incorrectly insured vehicles. Grey vehicles, or grey fleet, which is a term I'll mention throughout the webinar, is a term used to describe a vehicle driven for work purposes which is privately owned by an individual. This includes where a company car driver has opted to take the cash option if that's available. Often these drivers and their vehicles can be out of sight, but they should be managed in a very similar way to the traditional company vehicle. As we go through the rest of this webinar, it's really worth bearing in mind this type of vehicle and driver alongside the traditional company vehicles. The Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 states you must ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, the health and safety of all employees whilst at work. You must also ensure that others are not put at risk by your work-related driving activities. With 320 billion vehicle miles travelled each year, more vehicles on the road, and these mostly being used for business, the need to ensure that everything that can be done to drive safely is more important than ever. The average business user typically drives more than twice as many miles annually compared to a non-business driver. And you see the bold statement on the screen there that of the 3 million company cars on the road, roughly 1/3 of those will be involved in a crash annually. We should remember at this point that driving is not only dangerous in terms of somebody causing physical harm to themselves or others, but can also impact on business reputation, create costs through repair bills and lost uptime, as amongst many other things. Clearly, the priority is to ensure your employees are safe, but through meeting your obligations, there are additional benefits to your staff and your organisation. Before we look at the obligations to meet and the actions that can be taken by all parties, I'd like us to consider what risks our organisations can face as a result of risky driving. Today's webinar is intended to give an overview of the areas you should be aware of to make sure your employees are as safe as possible when they drive for your organisation. Let's think of the risks briefly, and then the impacts of these risks to your organisation. The main risks to keep in mind are poor driver behaviour, poor vehicle condition, vehicles which are unfit for purpose, drivers who are driving vehicles they shouldn't be, lack of guidance from employees' organisations, including lack of support and pressure to perform, causing long driving times or driving without a brake to become standard behaviours, as well as a low priority on driving for work within the business. So let's take a look at some of the risks. I've broken these down into four categories, although of course there is some crossover in some of these areas. We'll look at each in turn briefly, but they are financial, reputational, what I've called moral, and operational. When we have a look at each area, we should bear in mind the results that risky driving can have. So just starting briefly on financial, risky driving can cause damage to vehicles, which results in cost of repairs and cost of damage caused by those accidents and incidents, potential loss of revenue to your business, third-party costs, fines and penalties were incurred through poor driving, as well as a reduced efficiency of your business. Reputationally, poor driving reflects on your employees as well as your business. It creates a public view of what you're doing and how your organisation is operating, and it creates a presentation of your business generally to not just the public, but your suppliers and customers as well. From a moral standpoint, you should be considering the safety of your drivers and employees. You should be concerned about compliance of your vehicles to both legislative standards and other standards which might affect its particular segment that you operate in, as well as thinking about the perception of your organisation and how it's viewed. Operationally, there are considerations as well. If the vehicle's out of action, you lose the use of that vehicle. If a driver is unable to work through injury or through a licence infringement, that could cause an impact on the operational ability of your business, which could mean you have an inability to deliver products or services to your customers. It could also mean you have a reduced utilisation of vehicles due to numbers of vehicles available. Driving safely isn't just about being more sensible. It promotes better efficiency, avoids damaged reputations, amongst the other things that are shown on this screen. And I think now we have our first poll that you're going to run for us. Is that right, Emily?
Yeah, we've got a poll coming up now. Let me just bring it up. And it's, which risk or risks do you think are highest priority for your organisation? Operational, financial, moral, reputational, or none of the above? So that again was, which risk or risks do you think are highest priority for your organisation? Operational, financial, moral, reputational, or none of the above? And we're just going to let people vote for a little while. It is multiple choice, so you can click more than one. And the results, 43% said operational, 36% said financial, 43% said moral. The highest was reputational with 57%, and 7% said none of the above. So back to you, Drew.
Great, thank you for that. It's quite interesting, I think, and it the idea with that really is just to get thinking beyond the obvious impacts of incidents and damage and so on with vehicles. So I think that's a really interesting result. So I think it can be agreed that, particularly from those results, that risky driving can have a considerable impact both to the employees driving, but also to organisations in direct and indirect ways. There are, however, plenty of things that can be done to reduce these risks, and that's what we're going to have a look at now. So the 3 points that we're going to go through is, firstly, to understand the obligations that you and your employees have. This isn't all about an employee driving safely, and neither is it about you hand-holding your employees, but it's a combination of all responsible parties understanding their roles and acting on them in reducing road risk. The second is the actions that can be taken to protect against these risks. It shouldn't be just to meet the lowest threshold standard or to tick a box, but should be done to help promote safer driving at the highest possible level within your organisation. The third, and perhaps the most often forgotten, is about making these standards and the focus on safer driving and therefore risk reduction an ongoing activity within your organisation. And a little bit later on in the webinar, we'll be looking at a couple of ways that can help for this to be achieved. So some quick questions to bear in mind as we go through the responsibilities your organisation has, which we'll come back to. How confident are you that your employees are safe when they drive for work? Are the vehicles that they're driving fit for purpose and roadworthy? And are both your staff and their vehicles legally compliant? So here we're going to take a look at the fundamental responsibilities that you have as an organisation. For the purpose, again, for the purpose of clarity, the use of a vehicle for work purpose includes going to a meeting with a client or running a work errand. It also includes any vehicle, whether company-owned, leased or privately owned by the individual employee. So for example, somebody dropping some documents to the post office in their own car during a lunch break is also included within this. So just to cover off the points, first and foremost, it's really important to have a vehicle safety policy. This is to protect your staff and your business against unnecessary risk. It should include grey drivers, as we've mentioned, so those who use their personal vehicle for business use, as well as cash opt-outs. It's equally important that you act on the policy. You should fulfil the actions you've set out, whatever they are. However, we'll come back to some of these, but for example, driving licence checks, safety checks, insurance checks, providing driver training where needed, and so on. You should make sure that you're periodically reviewing the policy to make sure that new legislations and changes to the needs of your business are included. It should be done on an ongoing basis to share best practice. Make sure your drivers are equipped for specific circumstances, whether that's with specific equipment, supporting safe driving hours, or providing additional training. You should make sure your drivers are legal. This means checking that they have a valid driving licence and that those licences are valid for the vehicles that they're driving. Drivers should be insured. Where a driver uses a company-owned or leased vehicle, it's usually covered under a group insurance policy. But drivers using their own vehicles for work should ensure they have business use insurance to cover the times that they do use their vehicle to drive your organisation too. Having policy which covers mobile phone use, drink and drug driving are also really important to make sure risk is reduced. Vehicles used should be fit for purpose. This includes the vehicle itself, so the choice of vehicle. Is the vehicle load capacity sufficient? Can passengers, if that's applicable, travel safely? Does the vehicle have the equipment fitted, either as standard or subsequently, to help meet these needs? Vehicles should be serviced and MOT'd in line with scheduled requirements. Warning lights and faults should be addressed. The vehicle should be checked for things like road legal tyres and damage. Damaged windscreen and bodywork could cause danger to the driver as well as other road users. The checking of a vehicle is legally the responsibility of the driver. However, to make sure your drivers are aware of the standards required and periodically checking their vehicles is crucial. Where a driver drives their own vehicle, are you aware of its condition? Do your drivers, whether they're driving company-owned vehicles or their own vehicles, know what constitutes a safe vehicle? And finally, as an organisation, you have a responsibility to ensure that your drivers are able to drive safely. Long journeys should be broken up, allowing time for breaks. Scheduling of appointments should be done to allow for these breaks, and driving time taken into consideration alongside the workload or appointments too. So somebody expected to drive 6 or 7 hours in a day with 6 or 7 hours worth of appointments, that's something that should be revisited. And I think now we're going to have our second poll, just to have a gauge of how confident your organisation is in doing some of this.
Yeah, let me just bring the second poll up now. So the poll is, how confident are you that your organisation is meeting its responsibilities? Very confident, fairly confident, not confident, or I don't know. Again, that was, how confident are you that your organisation is meeting its responsibilities? Very confident, fairly confident, not confident, or I don't know. And let's just wait for everybody to vote. And the results show that 29% said very confident, the highest at 50% was fairly confident, not confident was 21%, and I don't know was 0%. So back to you, Drew.
Okay, thank you for that. I've made a footnote on the slide now. To have a vehicle policy in place is a requirement if you have 5 or more vehicles. It is also recommended for anybody with less than that, so it's also worth bearing in mind. The good news, and you can breathe a slight sigh of relief, is that this isn't all down to you as the organisation. Your staff do have a part to play as well. All of your employees have the ability, through simple things like ensuring they have enough time left for journeys, and that they know where they're going, that they know where they'll park when they get there, and that they're driving legally. They all have the ability to affect that. The vehicle that they're driving, whether it's company-owned or their own vehicle, must meet the guidelines laid out in your policy. It should be regularly checked by the driver and well maintained, with any faults being reported and dealt with. If a driver feels they need support to ensure they're driving safely, then this request should be taken seriously and, where feasible, managed. And this could range from where to obtain winter safety kits right through to supporting additional driver training. Making key information available to staff also means that they have an opportunity to understand the implications of their actions in a real-world situation, rather than just because a policy says so. Some of our key partners, such as Brake, who are a national road safety charity, they work with communities and organisations across the UK to stop road deaths and injuries, run an annual pledge scheme to help drivers to realise that they too can do their part by applying some simple steps when driving. So there really is a joint role in this to make sure that both your employees, drivers, and yourself are doing their part. So what does all this mean in the real world? What steps can be taken to try and minimise the risks that we've covered so far? The best place to start is with the fundamentals. Do you have a vehicle policy already? If not, then source one. There are many different places these can come from and many different forms that they can take. A basic version can be available free of charge. So for example, our partner Brake offers a free basic policy. Where your needs are more specific, then perhaps a bespoke version is a better option for you. You may have specific needs, specific use of your vehicles. You might have to pay a small charge for this, but for example, I Am Road Smart, another one of our partners, offer a service to have specific policies written with specific organisations in mind. If you already have a policy, then it's worth reviewing. When was the last time it was reviewed? Does it cover all of the aspects you'd like, such as mobile phone use, smoking, or drink and drug driving? Does it contain the latest legislation? Does it reflect the needs of the standards of your particular industry? A record of the vehicles that you have and the employees driving them might sound basic, but this is often an administration area which falls down. When an accident happens or a penalty charge notice is issued, it can be time-consuming to tie a vehicle to a driver if you have poor records. It also helps to ensure that all of your vehicle and driver requirements are met in terms of checks. Driving licenses of all employees who drive for your business should be checked periodically. It's recommended that this should be undertaken at least once a year, and it might be necessary to carry out more frequently where a driver has a number of points or covers a higher mileage. Checking a license when an employee joins the company isn't enough. It may also be worth considering where employees' partners or family members are allowed to drive company vehicles to check their licenses too. It's a company asset at the end of the day, and you're entitled to run these checks as part of the perk of allowing others to use it. Your current insurance policy should be monitored to ensure it's renewed in a timely fashion. Where a driver uses their own vehicle for work, it's important too the driver understands and carries out their obligation to have business use insurance. Without it, the cost of incidents could be considerably increased to both the employee, and it could have implications to your organisation too. Vehicles used for organisations should be fit for purpose. Implementing checks by drivers, your organisation, or even third parties helps maintain safe vehicles. You should make sure your employee understands what fit for purpose means by sharing best practice and guidelines as part of your driver handbook. And the last point on there is, again, finally, don't forget the grey fleet, because they are part of your workplace driving force too. And I think now we have our third and last poll, just to see how easy some of those steps could be considered to implement.
Yeah, let me just bring it up now. So the poll is, how easy do you think these steps are to implement? We do them all already. I think we could do them fairly easily. We would need some help and guidance, or I wouldn't know where to start. So that's, we already do them all. I think we could do them fairly easily. We would need some help and guidance, or I wouldn't know where to start. And just a reminder to send in any questions that you'd like Drew to answer, and I'll put them to him at the end of the webinar. Okay, the results were, we already do them all with 36%. I think we could do them fairly easily was the highest with 45%. We would need some help and guidance was 18%, and no one said that they don't know where to start. So back to you, Drew.
Thank you. It's good news that there was nobody on the last one there. Certainly some of those parts are easier to deal with and to implement into the business than others. So just wanted to think about, with that in mind, and with most of you already doing some of those, if not all of them, the idea of embedding safer driving in your business. So on an ongoing basis. As important as it is to have all of those safeguards in place, they're only as good as the time they're used. So for example, checking a driver's license when they start with an organisation is great. Checking it annually is better. But checking it on the frequency that you feel fits with your organisation is the right fit. So it's important to embed these safer driving elements into your business. And I've picked out 3 areas that I think are key where this can be affected. The first is review. This is taking an ongoing review of your vehicles and your drivers, looking at your policy, checking your licenses, insurance and vehicles periodically, reviewing your guidelines to make sure that they are clear and available for your employees to access. Where there are changes that are needed, getting the buy-in of those stakeholders before the changes are made and explaining why they're necessary. And that may be as simple as a change in legislation that needs communicating. Communication of those changes and reminders of those key areas really can help. Whether it's winter driving, travelling abroad using a company vehicle, or some of the seasonal changes, they're all high on the list of things that we can use to promote and encourage best practice to our employees. For those parts that you don't already have, there are lots of resources out there. existing resources that can help you to promote safer driving on an ongoing basis. And again, I've picked out a couple on there. Brake, again, as I mentioned, is a partner we're working with. They offer an entire range of resources which are available to help with key messages that you may wish to get out to your employee base. The pledge campaign I mentioned focuses on specific areas of road safety and culminates in Road Safety Week, which is, I believe, in November this year. Tyre Safe are the road tyre safety organisation. They offer advice and tips through their website to help, for example, with your drivers to check their tyres and to know when they need changing. And they have Tyre Safety Month where they highlight this in October. Ambit pulls together a number of these resources for you too, and I will cover those briefly shortly. Third way to embed these practices is through demonstrating the value of them to your organisation and to your drivers. How you do this will depend on the nature of your business and the emphasis of your business. The vehicles that you're using, the purpose that they're used for. But I've picked out some examples there which could be used in communicating. So for example, if through reduced number of incidents you have a cost saving, or savings achieved through better driving, therefore fuel efficiency, the effect that safer driving has on your organisation's productivity, and reporting things like the incident reduction rates. And this can be done both in terms of numbers as well as pound amounts. The last one on there was also the option to consider rewarding safe drivers. That doesn't necessarily mean the use of in-cab telematics or anything like that, but drivers that are driving safely, that are getting good feedback and aren't having incidents, is an opportunity to reward those drivers for driving well. I've mentioned Ambit a couple of times, and I just want to close really with introducing it to you. Ambit is a community, as I mentioned, of those who drive for work and those who look after workplace vehicles and drivers and employees who drive for work. Our new Ambit app, which is part of our community, is a free platform which will be launching soon, which will allow you to help manage workplace driving and to promote road safety. It'll also help with some of the topics that we've covered here. It pulls together different needs into one place, providing information, news and best practice, as well as drawing on external partner resources too, to make sure that you have the right information at the right time. The app at launch will have a range of tools in it, and there's a couple of screenshots there. The tools in there will help you to upload, manage your drivers and vehicles. So to have that in one place. To manage your company vehicle policy, so to be able to send that out to all of the employees you've uploaded into the app, and to make sure that they have read and understood the contents. There's a periodic vehicle safety check, which provides a survey template to your employees, listing the key areas that they need to check on their vehicles, which will also have some help and tips for how they should go about doing it. And the ability to manage driver insurance and license checks as well, to make sure that your drivers have valid licenses, and that the driver insurance, where they are driving their own vehicles, they can provide you with a copy of their insurance that shows that it's for business use. In addition to that, we also have a partner network, which is made up of a range of product and service providers, as well as expert bodies such as Brake and the Institute for Car Fleet Management, which help to provide you with the resources that you need from the experts in those particular fields. We're due to launch it very shortly, and if you'd like to be among the first to hear more, then please do register. I'll put the slide up with the web address on, and as soon as we are launched, we'll be in touch to tell you how to get going. And I'd just like to close by saying thank you very much.
Okay, thanks Drew for that, all very interesting insights. And for everyone listening, a full recording of the webinar will be made available on Executive Grapevine's event page. So thanks again Drew, and everybody have a great afternoon.